The following presentation was recorded live in Cincinnati, Ohio for CALLERLAB's 25th National Convention. This is Tape 10, Partners in the 90s and Beyond.
Okay, it's 1:30, so we'll get started. I'd like to introduce my panel to you. This is John Kaltenthaler from Pennsylvania, Gloria Roth from Canada, Nova Scotia, and Larry Davenport from California. And we're going to start with Gloria Roth. She's going to talk. She is speaking as a partner and a caller. She has been both, and she's going to speak to the value of the partner.
Thank you, Kathy. I would like to have the first-time attendee partners stand up. Okay, I see your hand up there. That's good. Good. We're glad you're here. Very glad you're here. And I'm glad to see the gentleman here, too. Okay? In running caller schools through the years, when we have our partner sessions, we give out a sheet of paper, and it's headed, put down any subject you'd like to discuss in the week that we have together. And invariably, the one subject that has come up more often than any other subject at all was how to overcome shyness in meeting and talking with people for somebody who did not plan to be thrust in the role of being out in the public eye and having to talk to people. How many of you feel a little bit shy or have felt shy and wondered at certain... Oh, yeah, John. Oh, yeah, Larry.
Oh, yeah.
All right. When I first started calling, I had a caller's partner like our gentleman over here, and I suffered for him as a male partner because very often as I became known as a caller, people would rush up to me. He would be beside me. You're listening, sir. He would be beside me, and they would say to me, Gloria, we want you to meet. And they would actually surround me, excluding him. And the pain was... the fact that I recognized that it was painful for him didn't help the situation because the pain had already come to him. And I would say, hello, and I'd like you to meet, and I'd pull my husband into the group and introduce him. But it got to a point where, it was really very painful. And I did not even this much understand the pain he had until 20-some years after I had been calling. I was divorced, and then 2 years later I remarried a caller, and I was thrust in the role that all of you people here are. And the pain that I experienced for my first husband is nothing compared to what I suffered being a partner. I don't know how you girls do it, and if I had worn a hat, I would take it off right now because I think it is, without a doubt, the hardest role in the square dance picture. And I want you to give yourselves a hand right now. Come on. It is a hard role. Now, I'm not saying it's all negative, but I mean it is a hard role, and I want you to know that I, for one, really, really understand that. Now, I'm going to read directly from this, and those of you, and I think there's enough copies for everyone, when I'm through, okay? That way I know I have your attention, and you aren't going to use fast readers will have finished all of this, within 5 minutes. Okay, I've entitled this, To Each Her or His Own. Many people are convinced that they are socially inept. They have convinced themselves that no one wants to talk with them or to be with them. They often make things worse by saying self-defeating things to themselves about their interactions with others. I want you each, as you're sitting there by yourself, you don't have to make any notes about this or anything, but I've got 10 little things I want you to ask yourself if at any time you frequently or any time had similar thoughts to these. Number one, now this is what you are saying to yourself. When I can't think of anything to say, I feel myself getting anxious. Number two, I hope I don't make a fool of myself. Number three, I'm really afraid of what she or he will think of me. Number four, I'm scared to death. Number five, he probably won't be interested in me. Number six, I'm not too comfortable meeting women or men, so things are bound to go wrong. Number seven, what I say will probably sound stupid. Number 8, I've just got to make a good impression on her or him or I'll feel terrible. Number 9, I feel awkward and dumb. She or he is bound to notice. Number 10, I wish I could leave and avoid the whole situation. Now, I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands, but each of you sitting there, if you even had a similar thought to one of those, it's very difficult being a caller's partner. In the relationship of being a square dance leader, which you are 50% of your partner as a caller. In other words, without you, if you are a partner to a caller, he is only or she is only 50% there, and never think that you're taking a back seat. I remember the very first night I went to Modern Western square dance class, and when I had to get in a square with the caller's wife and do a lady's chain, I can remember thinking, I think my hands are wet. I am so frightened because I'm going to be touching the partner of this man that's up on the stage, who I later learned didn't know how to call worth a damn, by the way. But it didn't matter. I was, really, everybody was really impressed. No, I'm serious. No one would know him because as soon as I started to call, he gave up. Anyway, I have some of our callers, really, truly, they don't recognize this fact. They think that, and I'm not saying this is your partner or at all, but they don't realize the importance, and partly this is our fault mutually as partners, that they don't realize the importance. And I think there's a change coming. The traditional role of a caller's wife being, be nice to your husband. Well, we'll get into that later, and all this bull, So I have a simple 5-step program for people who find themselves very shy. Now, some of you might not be shy, and so you don't want to bother picking up this paper. Except I think the last thing I say is worth all of the rest of what I'm saying. Okay, so you might want to have it for that reason. Here it is. Now, this came from Dr. Louis Janda, and it's from a book that's entitled, all the type of questions and queries and quizzes that you can give yourself to develop yourself. And it's a brand new book, so it's nothing from ages old. Step 1. These are the ways you're going to overcome your shyness. Step 1. For the first 2 weeks, the only thing you have to do is simply smile and say hello to anyone you can make contact with at work, in an elevator, a cashier where you buy your gas or groceries. Keep in mind that we don't mean, you don't make eye contact in Manhattan in the subway, or something, in a city. You probably are in the habit of waiting for others to initiate contact, but they don't know that you don't feel confident and don't want to risk rejection. They have been thinking you are unapproachable. You will be surprised and pleased at how many people will respond with a friendly smile of their own. When you try this out, some people will look at you as if you're positively crazy, and don't let that stop you. Now, here are some thoughts to say to yourself. Let's say, and this has happened to me, and people think that I don't get intimidated, and they're right. But I do feel hurt, and that's a different thing. Intimidation and being hurt are two different things. I have to say to myself, even walking down the hall here, I say, if I make eye contact, I say hello or good morning or something, and when somebody just looks straight ahead, I feel badly. I think, they hate me, And I'm sure you people are going to think this is going to be hard to do, to say hello to people and smile at them. But you'll find it is easier if you have some of these positive thoughts to say to yourself. I'm beginning to feel more at ease. Now, this is for 2 weeks. You're just going to try this if you're very shy. It doesn't have to be in context with square dance activity. This is out in your personal life. Number 2, no worries, no fears, no anxieties. Number 3, instead of worrying, I can figure out best to get to know him or her. Number 4, what the heck? The worst that can happen is that she or he won't go for me. That's the worst. He's not going to kill you unless you make eye contact in the Manhattan subway or something, All right? Number 5, she or he may want to talk to me as much as I want to talk to her and him or him. Number 6, this would be a good opportunity. Number 7, what do I have to lose? It's worth a try. Number 8, this is an awkward situation, but I can handle it. Number 9, even if things don't go well, it's no big deal, no catastrophe. Number 10, throw caution to the wind. And then I've added one onto the list that Dr. Janda put out, and this comes from my 40-year-old daughter that, 40-year-old daughter, and it's the best one of all, and I use it all the time, although you'll notice when you pick up these papers that I have only to be used sparingly, and it is piss on them. Now, those of you who know me, you know I don't use words like that, John, but when she said to me, Mom, you need to say more, and so I've added that on, because that's for those of you who find that effective to yourself. Now, that's the first step. On that first 2 weeks, just start saying hello and making eye contact with people. Don't let your eyes slide away. Look them right in the eye. You know, it's going to be easier than you think. The first few times will be kind of hard. And if you get hurt, you have these positive things. Pick one of them and say, and I personally think number 11's the best. After you walk by them and they haven't said hello back to you or haven't even smiled, say, okay, step number 2, during the second 2-week period, practice your small talk skills. While you are waiting in line at a grocery store, turn to the person behind you and comment on the weather or something. When you pay for your gas, ask the attendant how he or she has been. You may wonder if such familiarity is appropriate, but your doubts are a result of your telling yourself that others are going to reject you. You will meet expectations. You will meet exceptions, but a majority of people will respond to friendliness and openness in kind, and you need to remind yourself of this. You will be surprised at how much nicer the world can seem if you have a relaxed, friendly relationship with people you don't really know, but you come in contact with frequently. Now, step number 3. The third step of your self-treatment program is to offer other people sincere compliments. Notice that it's sincere. Don't make them up. Don't go up to somebody with a god-awful striped shirt on when she's as big as a horse anyway and say to her, you look nice in stripes, like Bob Howell did to me this morning. All right. I felt like saying number 11 right to his face, you know. Okay. I hope Bob Howell doesn't pick this tape up if it's being taped, you know. Anyway. Oh, sure. All right, so the third step is in developing your own confidence in your self-treatment program. Give people sincere compliments. Don't be gushy, but everyone likes to get a pat on the back every now and then. Tell a coworker that you like his new tie or a grocery checker that she looks like she feels good today. One of the most basic principles of human relationships is that we like those who like us. So show other people you like them. They have probably assumed that your quietness reflects your lack of interest in them rather than your own insecurities. Now, the fourth step. Step 4 is to start reaching out. You be the one to extend an invitation. Keep them simple at first. A coworker maybe for lunch, someone in for coffee. Now is a time to make new friends. As a caller's partner, be careful about singling out couples in the dance activity that you like for these special invitations. Getting close to certain dancers while keeping a distance from others can hurt a club. It is natural to gravitate toward couples who are near the same age as you and have children or whatever, or couples, blah, 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 blah. Sometimes the richest of relationships are with older, I'm saying this now, 15 years ago I wouldn't have said this. Sometimes the richest of relationships are with older, more experienced with life people. Don't you ever give up your former relationships that you had before you became involved with the square dance world. A beginning caller, and this is, I have it under the word caution, a beginning caller tends to feel closer to her or his first class of people. And that's natural. But be awfully careful not to exclude the others that come along, because if you do, your club won't grow. They will always feel they're outsiders to those first new people that your caller taught. Now, step number 5 that Dr. Janda suggests is, you understand most of these are his, but I've added in things that are apropos to our square dance activity. Now that you are feeling more comfortable around others, we hope, Dr. Janda suggests getting involved with a group. You already have such a group. It's with the square dance activity. Just keep in mind that your concern about the reactions of others makes you more sensitive than the average person, so you have the necessary ingredients to be a person who is liked and respected. All you have to do is let others know what is inside of you. And that's the end of what I've taken most of that from the book, except what applies to square dancing. And then this is the last little bit of my own. At first, a caller's partner has no idea of the position they are in because their partner decided to be a square dance caller. But people will automatically like you just because you are his partner or her partner, and they will respect you, and that makes it easier for you. Being a square dance caller takes time, practice, energy, and stress, but in all the square dance activity, the hardest role is that of a caller's partner. And then I have written in here, just so you can refer to it in 40 years after I'm dead, and say, look, she was a caller for 20 years before I became a caller's partner. The road of square dance life is strewn with unhappy partners, and for good reason. I take my hat off to you partners who have found your niche in this role. I was a failure as a partner, but I learned some facts I want to share with you. If you think it's worthwhile for the callers to hear these facts, please say so in your partner's critique sheet for next year, because other callers, except for John and Larry, and any other callers who might be in the room, haven't heard it. Fact 1, callers have concrete information to help them learn to be a caller. That's a fact. Everything's printed up for us now to learn to be callers. But the partner is thrust onto the sea of bewildering new situations in a sailboat with no sail to guide them. Fact 2, the age-old words of keep things pleasant for the caller before a dance is bull. It should be just the opposite. The caller should take extra time with the partner, because when the caller steps on stage, there must be utter concentration on a multitude of skills. A partner feels left out and lonely for her or his caller. Fact 3, while the caller is instantly gratified each tip called, the partner faces all the problems happening in the hall, the hallway, the toilets, the kitchen. I have written in here, kitchen, but you'll all know that it's supposed to be kitchen. Okay? Fact 4, many callers' partners are equipped to handle the public and love every minute of their role. Other partners may resent the role thrust on them by virtue of their caller partner's choice to become a caller. This resentment shows up in many ways. It may not surface at first when the excitement of tending a caller school or festivals or conventions and so forth, but in the long haul, resentment is a real problem in some caller-partner relationships. Fact 5, you need, as a group, an important, and listen closely, John Kaltenthaler, you need, as a group, to insist on having more training, guidance, and awareness given callers about the role of their partners at caller schools and in the CALLERLAB Caller Training Manual. It is, as of 1998, relegated to 20 minutes in the section of the Caller Coach Curriculum Guideline. My thanks to Kathy Davenport for giving me this time to speak to all of you, and please remember that no matter what callers think, you are the wind beneath their wings.
Thank you, Gloria. Next, we're going to have John Kaltenthaler. One of the ways that many of you may already help your caller is by helping him or her sound the hall. And John taught me to do that while he taught Larry to call. So I asked him to come, thinking this might be of some interest to some of you. So here he is.
Thank you, Kathy. How many of you are married or significant other is the most knowledgeable person on sound in the whole world of square dancing? Anybody fit that category out there?
Raise your hand.
How many of you dance in halls where the sound is perfect? It's a wood floor, never too slippery. Well, there's no callers up there, so you don't have to worry about that. Point is that we don't always have ideal circumstances. And just as Gloria has mentioned that the role of the partner is so very important, I would also add to what she had to say that don't ever forget that your caller calls a much better dance when you're there than when you're not there. And if any of you doubt that, talk to the dancers. They'll tell you. And they appreciate you as partners. When I had my recent illness, I got a lot of cards, one of which I cherish because the bottom said, "Boy, we can't wait to get back and see the John and Freddie show." Well, I took that as a great compliment, not only to our program, but especially to Freddie. And I appreciate her and what she does for the activity. And Larry and Kathy are testimonials as to her value to the square dance success or the lack thereof that I have had. What?
She's crying. She's turning red.
Yeah, right. Okay.
First time you told her you love her in 15 years.
No. I always use that singing called "Have I Told You Lately How Much I Love You?" The important thing about sound is every hall is different, and it helps if you have an understanding of a little bit of the principles of how to sound a hall. Now, if you have a hall, you have to consider the shape and the size of that hall based on the equipment. Now, if you're dancing for a typical club, it may be 2 squares, it may be 7 squares, Or in our area, if you have 10 squares, it's a festival. I mean, you know how that goes, right? The point being that you're going to have different requirements for the public address system that you use, and you may or may not require more than a single speaker. When you use multiple speakers, however, if you can do it and get adequate sound coverage, you are better off having those speakers arranged as a single source of sound, a central location, and point them out to the sides so that you don't have sound fighting with itself. And you can get diagrams and literature from Hilton, some of the other people who manufacture speakers, the cone of the sound, and where the two cones would come together. If you separated your speakers, you have the sound fighting itself. And it's important to understand that if the sound is going to be bad in a spot, you will have dancers come up to you or your partner saying, I can't hear. There's not a caller in the world that hasn't said, oh, okay, I'll change it. And they look like they're making an adjustment on the sound. Is that better? Oh, yeah, much better. I haven't touched the knob. But the perception which is there is such that the people say, oh, yeah, the sound is better. Translation, and the bottom line is they've learned to be more quiet and they can hear better. Typically, most problems of sounding a hall are that the caller has a tendency to turn the volume too loud. I say that again. If you're having problems with sound, turn the volume down. And if, again, you have a lot of reverberation, we as callers sometimes like to hear ourselves talk, and we will put on as much bass as we can. Other callers need it to be a lot sharper. Now, which is going to be the more pleasant sound? The one where the tones are softer. Well, not every PA set can adjust the microphone or the speaker's voice to be pleasant and nice sounding. Remember that if you have too much bass, it can get very stiff and soft and spoken, and it's hard to understand, especially if a caller doesn't articulate things. It may be difficult to understand if the caller does not articulate distinctly. So part of that is the caller's responsibility, but it's also your responsibility as partners to say clarity is important. And it's important that your caller partner learns to finish words and finish commands. It's not right, left, through. And yet we hear that at dances all the time, don't we? When you critique your partner, however, don't do it in front of others. Now, when Gloria was talking about the fact that sometimes people will say that the role of the caller's partner is never to bring up subjects which are distressful to the caller, I would generally say, yeah, maybe hogwash, but there are times when it shouldn't be done. There are times if your caller is going on stage and his or her turn is due next, that you don't come up and say, boy, let me tell you what I just heard out there. They just praised the USDA for their continued efforts of the dealing with BMI and ASCAP. That happened to me one time. I wish I just put the microphone and walked away and said, sorry, I can't do this. I'm feeling suddenly ill. I was so upset. I have no idea what I called except that I know it was wrong. And I mean that sincerely, because that disturbed me when the BMI and ASCAP thing first came out. And Freddie made a comment thinking I would want to know it. Well, I would want to know it, but not until after I finished calling. And I say that, and I think that Gloria will agree, that if something is said which is distressful and upsets your thinking process, you know, when we go out on the stage as callers, we say to ourselves, it's showtime, and we're going to put on a show. Our job is to entertain them. And if we collectively as partners and people do something or say something which is going to upset that presentation, we haven't fulfilled our role as partners as well as we could have. So the location of the speakers is important. The adjustment of the treble bass switches on the things, or the PA sets, are important. And the other thing is that not all callers, I'm sure these are for the people whose partners are not in this room, but not all callers understand proper tempo. And if the round dance cuer has just finished a waltz, it's very possible that the speed of that turntable is well above the 45 RPM, which makes the tempo sometimes in the 140 to 150 range, beats per minute. And if your caller is not paying attention, and suddenly the dancers are running out of breath as they're calling, that's a clue to you that you got to do something with that tempo and slow it down. So you want to develop some symbols and some communication skills with your partner that you can avoid this situation in the future. What do you do if the dancers come to you and say, Freddie, John, I can't understand John tonight. I can't hear John. Freddie and I have to develop something that's going to enable us to adjust that sound, and that's your role, which is individualized with you and your partner. It doesn't make any difference if they're hand signals, or you catch them during the break, or you walk in front of... If she starts walking up to the stage, I know that I'm in trouble. And Freddie taught Kathy all those same things, and Larry understands that when Kathy walks up, he's in trouble. Many of you may know Martin and Terry Mallard. Martin knows he's in trouble when Terry Mallard says, Martin, and just the tone of voice that she says, Martin knows that he's in trouble. So that's part of communication. That's part of your role as partners, to develop your communication with your individual partner and how you can make an improved presentation as a team. And I would just double echo what Gloria said, that you as the partner are probably the hardest job in square dancing. There's no doubt in my mind about that. But I would also urge you to think that you are probably equally important as the caller. Because if you don't prevent a team approach, and part of that is the sounding of a hall, and part of that is how you make the adjustments, then you're not fulfilling your job as well as you might. Some people like to have multiple speakers, and there are times when you're calling in a gymnasium where you may have to have multiple speakers. But if you can get away with it, I would urge you to combine those speakers to a single source and point them towards the corners. If you have a lot of echo problems and feedback and bounce back problems, not necessarily feedback as a volume adjustment, but if you're having echoing and bouncing around with the sound, put it into the corner so that you're not going straight into a wall. Use of tilters, the tilters that they have on the individual half stacks or speakers, what have you. Years ago, we didn't have the advantages we have today. The speakers were open back, and you had as much sound going out the back of the speakers you had going forward. And you had to sound a whole differently than you do now with the column speakers and the half columns and the split columns and the directors that they have out there by Yak Stack. All of those things are improvements, and you have to know what system you have. And if you've been over to Supreme Audio or to the Hilton, you see that multiple array of speakers in a single speaker gives you multiple directions. All of those things are tools of the trade, and don't begrudge your caller the fact that they want to get some new equipment sometimes. As we get older, and Gloria and I are more reluctant to admit this than Kathy and Larry, that there is a tendency of some to use these discs and mini discs for their records. That's fine, but at my age, I don't think I want to start investing in new equipment, and for which Freddie is eternally grateful.
It's on tape, Freddie.
It's on tape, but the point being that your caller needs new stuff periodically. Your caller may need new records periodically. And if you're not happy with what your caller is playing, go buy a record that you like and say, use this one. I can recall sometime back in 19 when Freddie and I were in Europe, why, she says, if you play that Solomon Levi one more time, I'm going to break it. How many of you have partners that have used Solomon Levi over the years? Well, I know, Kathy, you probably know as well as Jerry does, right? The point being that we as the leaders, we as the callers and the callers' partners have heard these records over and over again. But to the dancers, they're still new. And while we, as callers, have to overcome that and avoid the boredom because we've used it so often, you as partners need the same approach. It's still new and still fun for the dancer, and don't let your partner get discouraged as the caller because he has to use the same record over and over again. And if you just don't like a particular record, and there are some records which are recorded with too much treble, they're what I would say yammery, okay, they're too much violin. Make sure your caller partner knows that and go up and somehow remind them to turn the bass up and the treble down, because it's physically painful for people with hearing aids if there's too much treble in some of the records. And I think Gloria would agree with that. Am I correct? I know that Freddie does that because when I put on certain records, she says, "Turn off the treble." Very sweetly, of course. It's true, especially people who have hearing aids. It's very difficult for them if there's too much treble. And when you see the dancers going like this, you know they're making an adjustment in their hearing aid, and you don't have the sound adjusted right. Just as a caller is not disturbed by a lot of things on the dance floor, when the dancers go and listen to their watch to see if it's still ticking, you know that you've done something wrong. Okay? There's probably a lot of other things that you could talk about as far as what signals you will use to help your partner, but that's going to be another discussion at another one of the partner sessions. And that's really about all I want to say at this time. Kathy?
Thanks, John. As far as signals, I would suggest that you and the caller need to work them out. Larry and I have signals that we use so that he knows when I'm talking about voice and when I'm talking about record. Sometimes when I'm talking about treble. I have a little more trouble with treble and bass. Sometimes I just have to tell him how the sound is, and he has to decide what he has to adjust. But I know when it's bouncing off the walls, I can tell him that he needs to do something. Oh. When he needs to turn his voice up or down, I just point to his mouth and I'll point up or down. As long as I have his attention. At the beginning of the dance, I normally have his attention. I normally will check the sound right at the beginning of the dance. If it's in the middle of the dance and maybe some of the dancers have gone home and there's fewer people in the hall and he needs to adjust again, then I usually have to walk up to the stage and kind of get his attention so that he knows that I'm trying to give him a signal. If we need records up or down, I just kind of make a circle so that he knows it's the music, and I'll go up or down with my fingers. Treble, usually I use a T with my hand, and if it needs more treble, I can go up, and if it needs less treble, I'll go down. So if there's too much bass, I'll indicate that he needs more treble. We really haven't figured out too well how to use the bass exactly. And then I'll talk to him in between. If it's definitely been a bass or a treble issue, then I'll definitely talk to him in between. We have one dancer in our Monday night club that constantly is telling me that the sound is too loud. So I tell Larry, and sometimes he adjusts it and sometimes he doesn't, depending on how I feel about the sound. Just because she thinks he's adjusted it, it makes a difference to her, even if he hasn't done anything. And because they know I sound the hall, they usually come to me with their problems. If they can't hear or whatever, they usually come to me rather than to Larry. And so then I can pick and choose what I'm going to tell him. If they really have come up with something that's totally ridiculous, I may just go over and talk to him and not say anything about what they've said. But because I went over to him, they think I've told him something.
You would do that?
Yes, I would do that, John. And sometimes some things you don't want to tell him during the dance. Or for the gentleman, you don't want to tell the lady during the dance. So that way I've gone up to him, because he always does come down and talk to the dancers between. So I've gone up to him. They think I've told him something. And I haven't told him anything about the sound because it was fine. I do find that when I'm checking the sound, if I can hear Larry and I understand what he's saying, that's not always enough, because we do have to remember that there are a lot of elderly people and there are people with hearing aids, and sometimes I will kind of, if I'm on the borderline of whether I can hear and understand him, I will tell him to turn it up, even though to me then it will sound a little loud.
So you have to kind of judge your audience also as to whether they need it louder than you do. And certainly you are used to his voice. If you're with a new group of people, if he's not enunciating, you need to remind him to do that, or change the treble and the bass and that type of thing. Okay, I've asked Larry, my partner, to come and give us some stress-reducing exercises, some of which we can do at the dance after some of the dancers have stressed us out, those difficult people we talked about earlier.
Thanks, Kathy. Before I do that, just a couple of comments that picked up from here. One of the things that John talked about, the showtime, and I'm not sure if he emphasized it enough, but it's not just the caller saying it's showtime; it's the caller and partner saying it's showtime. So include yourself in that. Don't forget, because you're both there, and it's really important. And Kathy and I will often say on the way of the dance as we walk into the door, it's showtime. And it helps put us in the frame of mind. The other thing, as far as some of these adjustments, your caller may not know sometimes when you've got dancers saying that you can't hear, that, again, the problem may not be volume, but it may be, again, that treble setting, and you need to know what John was talking about. You may need to sharpen it rather than to turn it up, so if you can catch that. And on the hearing aid front, you do have to make some adjustments, but you should get them out of the way early in the evening, because dancers with hearing aids are adjusting at the same time you're adjusting. If your caller fiddles with the sound throughout the evening, you've got dancers out there continually trying to readjust those hearing aids for the evening, and that's not fair. And if you've got a caller that really likes to use this little knob up here, which turns the music up and down all the way through the dance, that can be really painful for people that have hearing aids. And so that depending on your group, and if that's the case, keeping a steady through the program is going to be a lot better, and that adjustment on the too sharp record to bring it back in line with where you are, all those things, but keeping a steady state, that's something, at least with some of the groups I'm calling for, that really makes a lot of sense. What I'd like to switch to is really a couple of simple exercises. Nobody has to go anywhere, just where you're seating. And obviously there are lots of things that will raise stress, just if you have to get up on the microphone and the heart pumps a little faster, or anything else going on a hall. There are a couple of small exercises that I just wanted to guide you through and tell you about a little bit that I've had learned over the years from some seminars that I've gone to. And it can work for anything. And the title of these would be Progressive Muscle and Breathing Relaxation. I'll start with the breathing relaxation. I mean, any of these things, whether you're at home, you want to lie down, or if you're sitting at the dance, just sitting. But the key to start, one thing, is to uncross your legs, sort of sit comfortably. If you've got really tight clothing, something around the neck, just loose a little bit. And just part of relaxing is just to sit there. One of the things I'll say about the underlying theme of these things, what I'm going to talk about, is one of the things that might raise your stress is thinking about something stressful, obviously. So part of these exercises not only to try to reduce your stress in your body, but is to reduce your stress in the brain. And so there's a certain amount of concentration on what your body is doing is one of the things here. So, for instance, you can try it as an exercise. You can close your eyes through this if you like. You can keep your eyes open. Or whatever you want, but the idea is to sort of let other distractions out of your mind. And if you're sitting there comfortably, the first thing you would want to do is just take a deep breath, hold it a little bit, and let it out gently, and then just let your body start breathing on its own. Don't force it, just let it breathe on its own. And when you're starting to breathe on your own, what you want to do is start being aware of what your body is doing. For instance, as you're breathing in, your diaphragm is pulling that air into your lungs, and your abdomen is going out, and you can sense that. You can feel that. And as you're breathing out, you can feel that the diaphragm is going up and your abdomen is going back in. And if you are concentrating on that, you're not thinking about something out. You're slumping over the table. So if you lose that, you just take another deep breath and let yourself breathe evenly, just sense that. And you can feel your ribs and your chest expand as you Breathe in, relax as you breathe out. Did I get that right? The right direction? And it doesn't matter. That's right. It doesn't matter how long you do that for, but you just keep yourself in that state. And a further help, as you're sensing that, a further help, you can say to yourself, for instance, as you breathe in, you can say to yourself, I am. And as you breathe out, you can say, relaxed. And what's happening is you're sensing your body, and whatever is bothering you has less chance to get in on your attention. Okay, and you can do that anywhere. If you feel some butterflies, and you're getting up here ready to speak on the microphone or something like that, a simple little breathing exercise and concentrating on that can help reduce that a little bit. And with practice, you can do that anywhere. Anybody fall asleep yet? Does anybody feel more relaxed if you do that? Can you feel your body start to relax if you do that? Now you can add to that what's called progressive muscle relaxation, and it's both a stress reducer, and if you're flying around on airplanes and not able to get up and walk around, it's a way to sort of exercise your muscles a little again. But if you can clench your fist and unclench it, but if you also think about, you can tense that muscle in your hand, say you can feel it tensed, you haven't really seen your hand move, and then you can just physically let it untense, and you can feel that relaxation. So when I talk about slowly tensing your muscle, that's what I'm talking about. It's not clenching or it's not getting real tight, but it's just letting yourself make those muscles just a little harder, and then you can let that go. So in progressive, if you're sitting there, as you're sitting there, just tense up your shoulders, your arms, and down to your hands, and just feel that tenseness. And then very slowly, starting at the shoulders, just physically let yourself untense all the way down to your fingers. And you can repeat that a few times. And you should be able to, can you sense yourself doing that? Anybody know they're tensing and untensing? Anybody not tensing? and they're past tensing. The progressive means different muscle groups. So your shoulders and your arms, your forearms and your hands, and then let that go. Your scalp, your eyes, you can tense, if you want to furrow your brow a little bit, and just let that slowly untense. Your upper legs, your hips, you can tense your upper legs and slowly let that relax. Your lower legs down to your feet, and then slowly let that relax. And you can do that in a progression. And what happens again? You're concentrating on that. You're letting your body relax, and you're not really you're not allowed to spend the time on what's really was causing you to have your stress level raised. That was the diction part of it, or finishing off the word. The stress level raised. And so you can do that. Take a breath and tighten your chest muscles, and then slowly let that. And so if you do that in progression, that's another way of simply allowing yourself to relax a little bit. And so I just wanted to just give you those two hints. So you don't have to be anywhere to do that. Nobody has to know you're doing it. But you can take time out for yourself and just allow yourself to relax a little bit. And if you learn to do that when you need to and make it part of just a skill set you have, I found for me it really does work. So those are the two exercises I wanted to give you.
Thank you, Larry. I thought those were pretty good because we can do those at a square dance if we've had a particularly trying evening or something, whereas some of the other stress exercises that are out there, you really do need to have some privacy and couldn't possibly do them at a dance. We would like to open this up to questions. We do not have a roving microphone. If you have a quick question, I will be glad to repeat it. If you have a little more involved question, it would probably be good if you come up to the front and ask your question there. Before we do that, I do want to go into a little bit about the role of the partner. When I started planning the sessions, coming to a lot of conventions, I thought, gee, we've done this session, and we've done this session, and we've done this session. And for a lot of the partners, you've heard it and heard it and heard it. But several people, including Larry, reminded me that there are a lot of newer caller partners here and there's some first-time attendees. So what I tried to do is kind of condense some of the information that we've talked about over the years and put it together so that it wouldn't be a whole session, but would give you kind of a general idea of what we've talked about. In your areas, you probably have a lot of different types of partners. You've got some partners that go every single time the caller goes, and some of us are very quiet. And that's got to be, obviously, whatever your personality is, that's what you have to bring. You can't be something that you are not. Nor should the dancers expect you or your caller to expect you to be something that you're not. Something else that happens over the years is, obviously, the children grow up and leave home. Maybe you decide to go back to school. Maybe if you've been home while the children are growing up, you go back to work. Or if you've been working the whole time and you decide now you can stay home for a while. So that may change how you enter into the activity. Recently I spoke to a partner who has, for 30-some-odd years, gone with the caller most or all of the time, and she has decided that it's enough. She was ready to retire. He's not ready to retire, so he's become a bachelor caller. She's staying home, and he's going out. And they obviously discussed it, and this is where they are at this point in their lives. Another example, Jerry Junk. Sharon does not travel with Jerry. And one of the things he told me, he's told dancers in the past, when they ask why Sharon doesn't come, he says, well, does your wife go to work with you every day? It is a job. When the clubs hire the caller, they're not hiring you. Unless your partnership is such that you go all the time, they're really not hiring you. So you have to work that out. Something I was thinking about when I was putting this together is your relationship, whether it be a marriage or otherwise. You have drawn from your parents, your aunts, your uncles, your friends, on what your relationship should be. Even if you don't directly know that, you've pulled things the way your parents were together or your grandparents were together. You've either decided that something about their relationship that you really wanted to continue in your relationship, or you've seen things you didn't like and said, I never want to be that way. You can look at the other partners in your area or talk to the other partners that you meet here and get ideas for the way that you want to be or the things that you like. And pull the things that you like from their experiences, but you really do have to be yourself. And if going all the time is what you and your caller decide, hey, that's great. And if going never is what you decide, that's, as long as you and your caller are happy with the decision, it really doesn't matter what the dancers. I know in our area, our clubs are thrilled that they have a caller that brings his partner most of the time. Because the last, in both of the two out of the three clubs, their caller didn't bring, because of the distance involved, didn't bring their partner with them. They're both very much partners or couples clubs. So for them, it's important. But if I'm not there, I'm not there, and they have to understand that. So you really have to work out what works for you. You can look around, you can take examples from other people. But you can only be what you are. And sometimes you'll hear from people, this is the way you have to do it. And there is no specific way that you have to be. You have to deal with your life, and you and your caller have to work it out. Just the same way as you've worked out your relationship away from the calling activity, your relationship away from that calling activity is unique to you. And your partnership has to be unique to you.
Prior to her retirement, Freddie was a teacher. And if you know anything all about elementary education, you know that elementary school teachers have to take homework home at night. While she was working, she frequently would not go to out-of-town dances with me because she had her own career as a teacher and she had her own responsibilities. The clubs understood that. When she retired, she goes with me more often than she did before she retired. That does not mean that she goes every night, nor do I try to put pressure on her to go with me every night. I know, and I tell her I call a much better dance when she's with me. But that's still her decision and something you have to work out, as Kathy said, with your partner. And whatever works for you is fine. Don't be pressured into saying, oh, I got to go to dance with my partner, with my husband. He's the caller, and that's part of my job. Hogwash. If you don't feel like going, don't go. You're much better off that way. How many of you feel that you have to dance the part of a boy if you don't like to? Hold up your hand. Anybody? How many of you feel that you have to dance the part of a boy if you're asked to fill in the square? That you have to do it.
How many of them like to do it?
How many of you like to dance the part of the boy?
There you go.
Terrific. If you're happy, enjoy. I know a couple of callers whose partners say, under no circumstances will I dance as a boy. And I'm not going to fault them because that's what they've worked out with their partner. And as Kathy said, there's no magic formula that says, you must do this, you must do that. And Gloria's been on both sides of it, both as the caller and as the caller's partner. And if you know Deborah Parnell and Frank Lescrenier, same thing there. If she's the featured caller, Frank feels left out when the conversation comes up. Similarly, if Frank's the caller and Deborah is along as the partner, she gets bent out of shape if they don't talk to her because she's used to the role as the caller. And I think that's important.
But the big difference is I was a caller for 20-some years and didn't understand the role of a partner, whereas they started at the same time, and there's a big difference there, you know. Are we going to go to questions?
Yeah, just a minute. I did talk to Frank on my way down here, and one of the things that he did bring up, which is maybe something that most of the female partners have not had to deal with, but a lot of the clubs don't know what to do with Frank. You know, a lot of the clubs, when there's a female partner, they have made arrangements to make sure that she dances. That may or may not be true, but in a lot of the clubs, they make sure that we as the caller's partner dance, and a lot of the clubs don't know what to do with the male partners. He said he had one club where the lady came up to him and said, I drew the short straw. I get to dance with you.
Silver-tongued devil.
And he said, oh, gee, I really appreciate that, but my back's been bothering me. And I don't blame him because that was not a very gracious way to ask him to dance. So this is another problem that the male partners maybe have over the female partners, although we probably get asked to dance all the time, and maybe we don't want to dance all the time. If you have questions, let's open it up to questions on any of these subjects or anything else for that matter, as far as I'm concerned. If it's a short question, I'll repeat it. If not, come up front.
You can repeat it.
Okay.
Why do they like dancing?
Gloria wants to know why you like dancing the man's part. The directions are to the man? It's better than sitting out. It's a challenge. Makes you a better dancer. You get to dance more and you get more variation. Makes you feel needed. Somebody else had their hand up. You think it's easier? You think it's more difficult and the man has more to do? Well, try teacup chain. The man just stands there. Oh, I think that's easy for the man. He just stands there. I think it's more difficult because we learn the woman's part first, but sometimes you're more gentle than some of the men. Yes, I definitely get that comment all the time when I dance the man's part. In fact, we have a lot of widows in our Monday night club, and they will seek me out to dance with them rather than one of the men that is sitting around, because I am more gentle. Sometimes you just like to dance, and any warm body will do. You don't think it gives the proper perspective in a demo? You don't feel comfortable filling in? You don't like it in a demo? Okay, I can see that point. You find that the men are intimidated, say, when there's 5 women in the square, and then they want to turn you back into a woman during the tip because they forget that you're dancing a man's part. Anybody else have comments? You'll wear a hat in Western wear? Yes. Okay, the question is, I brought up Frank Lescrenier, Deborah Parnell's husband. She feels that a man can always go out and ask a woman to dance, but she doesn't feel that a woman should always ask a man. If I need to fill in a square, I will ask whoever's sitting outside, whether it's a man or a woman, because the square needs to be filled up. I can dance both parts. I do dance both parts. Our Monday night club, it took me a long time, because when Larry was hired, one of the first things they said to me was, unless it is absolutely necessary, we do not want you to dance the man's part. It took a long time, but as we had more and more widows in the club, because they do support their widows. They are a couples club. They are a very staunchly couples club. We've been through a few wars in between, because we have 2 ladies that come out, elderly ladies who have decided they just enjoy dancing. They don't care. The one dresses in slacks, and there was a big to-do about that. And over the years, we've gotten them to accept it, and now it's just the way it is. I never dance the ladies' part.
Recently, I went to dance, and I was actually on a dance card. At the beginning of the dance, at the social table, we had a dance card that had 8 or 9 lines on it. The men signed that card. I danced every step. They were 7 weeks. Took the card to the next person on the list and said, "Here's the dance card for the caller's call."
Yeah.
Why don't you come put that on the microphone? I thought that was unusual. Why don't you come put that on the microphone for us? It'll be better. Yes. I've heard about it right here.
Well, it's the first time it ever happened to me. And it just was recently, like last month. I didn't realize till like the 2nd or 3rd tip that I was on a dance card. At the beginning of the dance, they do this for every caller's talk. The men sign their name on a line. They have it at the treasurer's table. So the first man asked me to dance. Then he took his card to the next person on the line and so that person knew, and he walked up to me and said, "I have the honor of being your next partner." And so I danced every tip. They had 9 lines in case there were 9 squares. I think we only danced 8 squares that night, or 8 tips. But I'd never seen that before, and I thought that was really unusual. And they didn't feel like it was a chore. They made me feel like they really wanted to do this because they signed up for it.
That's great. Thank you. Square Dance Club that hired you initiated that. She had the option of turning down the dance if she didn't want to dance that tip. She didn't initiate it. Would it be proper for the partner to initiate a dance card? What do you think, ladies? Gentlemen?
Raise your hand if you think no.
No? Majority says no. How about yes? Nobody says yes. Well, is it right for the club to do that without asking first? Well, she's saying she had the option. She was very politely asked to dance, and she had the option of refusing. Obviously, if she'd come in and say her back was hurting, she could have just said that and not danced. I think that she, if they were insisting that she dance, maybe not. How do you ladies feel? Is it okay to do that, or do you not want that done? Most of you don't want it. Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing. Kathy was talking about the Monday Night Club with the extra ladies. They do something I've never run in before, so I just let you know about that. When we are doing the tip after the patter, I will call ladies switch, and that's an opportunity then for the gals who are sitting on the sidelines to get in and some of the gals to sit down. And this is club initiated. I get in trouble if I forget to say ladies switch. They really take it serious. But this is one of the ways that they try to make sure that since they know they have extra ladies rather than extra gentlemen, that's one thing that they do. And I just thought I'd let you know that.
We have the same club. I'm Freddie. Freddie Kaltenthaler, but John is a guest caller several times a year at a club in Pennsylvania that has the dance card. And when I come in, they ask me, "Would you like to dance?" The second, not the first tip. And after that, if I say every other tip is fine, my fear is that nobody will sign up.
Freddie.
Hi, I'm Jody Gross from Asheville, North Carolina. We went to a club one time, and my husband, if it's a new visit, my husband always introduces me at the beginning of the dance after the club president and tells the gentleman, "My wife likes to dance, and if you feel you can, she would love to dance with you." So he lets them know that I like to dance. We went to a club one time. First time, he told the people that I did like to dance. I was not asked to dance the whole evening. I don't understand why. I mean, I looked all right, I guess. When we left, I said, "That's it. If you're asked 10 times, we never go back to that club again." I may not have been right, but I was incensed. I didn't like that at all, to be ignored. And I think it's up to the caller to introduce his partner to the clubs at the beginning of the evening and let them know whether you like to dance, you can't dance, or the circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you, Jody. Well, I have to say, John always introduces Freddie, and he did pass that on to Larry, so if I'm not introduced by the club, he does introduce me, so hopefully all of your callers are. And the one time that he did forget, he heard. He did hear about it. I have talked to some partners who don't care if they're introduced or not, or even prefer not to be introduced. And that's fine, obviously, if that's what you want, and the caller, you and your caller are okay with that. Hey, go for it. Any more questions or comments? She's saying many times when she goes to a dance, she's asked every tip to dance, and when she doesn't want to dance, she wants to take a break. Rather than telling someone that she doesn't want to dance, she goes to the restroom. I do that sometimes, but I also will tell someone that I need a break. This is my tip to rest.
I would like to ask the two gentlemen, your partners are callers, is that right? Are you getting anything out of this at all? No, I'm serious. I mean, is it? Are you picking up some things that might apply to you? And don't you talk? Sir, I'm very serious, though. I mean, I know you don't talk. Come get one of these. No, don't you have something that we'd like to hear? Because your role is a growing role. There are more and more women taking up calling, and we'd like to hear something from you. Something. It doesn't have to be about this subject at all, but don't you have some little thing you'd like to bring up? You're observing. What did he say?
He's just absorbing wisdom.
Oh, that's a very good thing to say. And how about you, sir? What is your name? Yeah, why don't you, John? Here.
I'm John Brazil, and I've gone to a few square dances that my wife's called at, and I've been asked quite a few times to dance. I didn't have no trouble.
Good. Thank you, John.
They call it a ringing endorsement.
Should we be expected to dance at a dance where they are paying?
Question, let's see. Should we be expected to dance at a dance where they're paying to dance? Hands? Yes? Should you be as the caller's partner, should you be expected to dance? You may, if you don't want to dance, you be expected to dance?
No. We as a partner expect to dance.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do we as a partner expect to dance? When other people are paying to dance? Yes? No. Okay. No? You think it's important to fill the square? But that's different. I think Kathy's asking, should we dance in a situation where it means someone else is sitting out? They've paid. Helen? If they don't get up? Okay.
Give me a chance. Give me a chance. I'm Helen German and I live in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and my husband calls for a single club, and we have very often an overabundance of women. Consequently, I feel it's very wrong for me when I'm asked to dance and we have people sitting and they've paid to come in for me to get up and dance. And I will tell the fellas, no, would you be good enough to dance with someone? They've paid to come in. I haven't paid. I'm here. And I will get up and dance either the man or the woman if necessary. But I think it's very unfair for me to dance when people have paid to come and they're sitting and they're all dressed up. Thank you.
Okay, the other comment over here was if the dancers are sitting and they're not getting up and the caller is trying to fill a square, hey, the dancers obviously don't want to dance, so there's no reason at that point not to get up if you want to dance. I feel like Helen, if the dancers want to dance, I shouldn't be dancing in their place.
I'm Margaret Sparks. My husband's J.R. Sparks. And I think that question is kind of a double edge. If it is your club, then I feel the way this lady does. If that's your home club, then your club dancer should dance first. But most of our work is done on the road. Therefore, we are a visitor to their club, and I'm a guest at their club. And I do feel that they have an obligation to the caller's partner to see that she's somewhat entertained, she or he. I don't mean dance every tip. But I think the club president or an officer at some point during the night does have an obligation to do that. But if it's your home club, you've got to take care of your home people first.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions, change of subject? When do we get dessert? Oh, cute. None of us really needed that dessert, so. I am going to remind you again, critique sheets are very, very important to me. Those surveys, I would really, really like to have you take them home, get other people, make copies, get other people to fill them out. Please, please get them back to me. Some of the questions the EC wants, but I really would like to have a database of what talents we have amongst ourselves, and definitely on the critique sheets. Tell me what you didn't like, and tell me what you did like, too, for that matter. But I think the most important thing is, if you didn't like something about sessions, let me know, because we just, there haven't been that many critique sheets over the last several years, and it's hard to plan sessions when you don't know what people don't want as well as what they do want. And remember about Gloria's handout, and I saw a hand in the back of the hall? No? Anybody else? Okay, thanks for coming.